And so, yes, yeah, I am the VP of Global Solutions for PagerDuty. And so I'm in a role where I'm on the technical side of our go-to-market. So I get to work with a ton of leaders across a variety of industries, including financial services, which is our fastest growing industry segment by far for the last few years. So I'm going to focus, based on my experience, what I'm seeing in terms of how people are looking to, how they're looking to grow, what their vision is, the challenges they run into, et cetera. And I'll start with a little bit of context. If I can get this to move forward. There we go. So obviously, it's been a weird year. And just a little bit of context around that. What we're seeing is priorities are changing really fast. People have moved to reducing costs, especially in industries where there's a lot of uncertainty, so that they can control their own destiny. Now, they're also trying to protect their customer relationships. Those are huge. They want to make sure that they don't churn and lose customers. And then, of course, because every business has had to become a digital business, people are no longer meeting in person, performing transactions in person, or even working with colleagues in person. They've got to accelerate digital transformation and get the most out of their digital assets. So this transformation, because of COVID, is happening faster than ever. And we see transformations take a variety of forms. One is operational maturity. You've got people that are looking to iterate on their processes and their technology. You've got people looking to do bigger change, like cloud migrations or DevOps, or what we call hybrid ops, because most people are not going all in on DevOps. It's a journey. You've got some parts of the business that are super critical and changeless. So you want to continue using your existing processes for those. And so that's what we call hybrid ops. All of these transformations are designed to accelerate your innovation while lowering your costs and, of course, reducing your downtime. Those transformations can be the tailwind that you're looking for, but if you're not careful, you can run into the obstacles that we see pretty frequently, and they can become a headwind. And so the transformation, or I'm sorry, rather the obstacle or the headwind that I wanted to talk about was holding on to your legacy processes as you go through these transformations. And specifically, I wanted to focus on the incident lifecycle and the incident response process. This is a really important area because if you think about it, incidents impact uptime, they impact revenue, they have huge impact on your dollars in terms of your cost and your productivity of your people. And so this particular process, it starts with a growing list of technologies, monitoring tools and change tools, et cetera, kicking out signals. And all of those signals need to be aggregated and go into a centralized organization, whether it's a NOC or a TOC or L1 group. They're looking at that data and trying to understand it. They're trying to figure out what's the scope of this? Is there an impact? What do we need to do about it? And then they've got to, once they identify something, they've got to go through manual runbooks that are often happening or being executed in silos. This process usually takes 30 minutes to get to those teams, get that data to those teams, another hour to triage it and go through those initial steps of remediation. And then if they identify something that is big and they need to orchestrate the response, it can be a very, very painful and manual process. You've got to look at call trees, manually call people. If you're lucky, you've got a one-way notification system, but you're not always sure that people are responding. Are they engaged? Getting all of these people together, getting them on the same page with the information they need to work through this issue is a huge challenge and very burdensome, but also time-consuming. I'll give you one example. I was talking with the chief digital officer a few weeks ago from a large bank, and he said that he gets woken up at 2 a.m, and that's part of the job. He accepts that. But what really bothered him is that he got into the call 30 minutes in. 30 minutes in, they had 452 people on the call, and I specifically asked if he was exaggerating, and he wasn't. And he said what was really bothering him, what was really worrisome, is that they didn't have the 1 or 2 people that they really needed. So they had siloed expertise that was causing a bottleneck in this process amongst all of the other manual steps. So huge impact to your business. And of course, as this time goes on, these incidents become more impactful to your business. Minor incidents become major incidents. It's a huge customer impact, which translates into dollars. This problem or this challenge with this legacy process, it gets exacerbated as you go through these transformations. You've got more teams, they're distributed. Because they're trying to innovate faster, they're creating more change. So you've got an exponentially increased volume of incidents, and the expertise that you need is more specialized and distributed because all the change or a lot of the change is happening at the application level. So trying to manage through all of that while maintaining the compliance, the control, the security, maintaining your SLAs, that stuff isn't optional. So the challenge is huge in this regard. The solution that we see with most of our customers is service ownership. And that is empowering your people with the ability to code the software, ship it, and own it in production. There's a huge responsibility with that, but it's hugely empowering. And so the big difference that you see here is that that middle box, the triage, all of those signals are going straight to the services and the service owners, which is really important because they understand all of those signals. They understand the data that's coming in because they built the applications, they maintain the monitoring systems, they understand the payload of all of the events coming in. So they don't know what to do with it very quickly. And so, of course, that condenses the amount of time that this process takes dramatically, going from hours to literally minutes to get the right team engaged. And of course, if it is a major incident, you do need to get the major incident management team, executives, everybody else in the loop from across the business. You still need to do that, and we'll talk about that in a minute in terms of how we can help with that. But this is a huge part of the process and a huge tailwind for you as you go through these transformations. But there's some pitfalls here. One, you're putting a lot of trust, a lot of accountability in those service owners. And change, this type of change in particular, is very hard when you have opinionated technologists going through this type of change. It can be disruptive. So when you talk about this change, you've got to address some very important questions. They seem simple, but they may not be. So what is a service? Who owns it? And what are they accountable for? And I'll give you an example with a large financial services institution. They have a bill pay function. It actually is broken down into 18 different services. So whenever they have a major incident as it relates to the bill pay, one of their biggest challenges is who actually owns that service? Who should be responsible for fixing it? And then you've got to ask, what does it mean to be on call? And you've got to help your people with that. And it's one of those topics that is very sensitive. There are a lot of people who are afraid of going on call. They don't want to be on call, and I get that. But the reality that we find with our customers is that when people go on call, it actually improves the quality of their life. Because if you're a subject matter expert and you're not on call, the reality is that you're always on call. You just don't know when it's going to happen. If you're on call, you can put it into a fixed window, know that you're on call and expect it. But when you're not on call, there are other subject matter experts with that domain knowledge needed to work through whatever issues there are. And so, remaining questions: what happens if something is missed? How can you ensure that nothing like that is going to happen? And how do you maintain the visibility? So as you go through this transition, you've got to have guardrails that protect you and give you the visibility into the health of your business. So that's where PagerDuty comes in. If you look at this service ownership and the incident response process, PagerDuty comes in and we help with the guardrails that you need. We help you define those services. We help you define the dependencies between the services. So if there's something wrong with my service, I can actually understand, is this a colleague's service that is actually impacting mine, or am I impacting a much larger part of the business? That ownership is defined not just across all time, but across specific time segments, because you've got on-call schedules. You know who owns what at any particular time. And then one of the big risks that I mentioned is things falling through the cracks. How can you prevent that? PagerDuty has automated escalations built in so that if somebody misses something, because humans are fallible, you've got automatic escalation. So for example, if somebody gets a phone call in the middle of the night and they've got great intentions, but they happen to fall back asleep before actually doing any work, that incident will automatically get escalated to the next person in the rotation. It'll automatically get escalated to their manager if it gets to that point, and on and on and on, ensuring that you've got the accountability built into the system. Then we empower your folks by, first, all of those things that I just talked about, we make those in a way that is self-service. They can manage that themselves, and because they've got that accountability and the escalations are built in, all of that we find that is maintained incredibly well. But we give them other tools as well. The volume of events that I mentioned coming through these services can be huge. Even if you're looking at just a microservice associated with an application, the volume can still be disruptive. So we give them distributed AI ops. We use machine learning, and based on past behavior, based on what we're seeing in the payload of incidents, or in alerts and events rather, we can compress all of those signals down into what is just relevant and actionable, but still giving your people the context that they need to act quickly. That can be a huge savings in terms of the volume of disruption for your people. But we also give them tools to orchestrate the response. Rather than taking dozens and 30, 40, 50 minutes to orchestrate the right team, we can automate that process with just the click of a button. They can bring in teams from all over the business without having to know who's on call, who's responsible for what, etc. And because you're doing all of this in a single platform, you have great visibility into the health of your technical services, but also the business impact. How is this impacting your customers in real time? And then when things aren't broken, you've got great analytics. We've got data around the machines, the events, the alerts, the people, the process, all of the activity. So we can help you do things like postmortems without having to do all of the manual forensics to identify what happened. We can also help you optimize continuously. And that's a huge thing in terms of things like, do we have infrastructure that is causing us more and more problems? Do we have where we need to invest? Do we have people who are overburdened and at risk of attrition and burnout? All of that is available through our analytics. And I think one other thing that I neglected to mention is that not only does PagerDuty help with this, but the whole concept of service ownership reduces your incidents altogether just by giving people that ownership, owning their code in production. What you're doing is making people responsible for the code they write in production. It immediately makes them write better code because they know that they're going to be the ones woken up in the middle of the night. But you also have shorter feedback loops because they're seeing how your customers are using their software in the real world. They're getting to see that live, so they get to iterate on it and improve it faster than they've ever done. You're building a learning culture. And so we realize that service ownership is not all or nothing. It can be a journey for those that are adopting it, but it is not necessarily for everybody, and it shouldn't necessarily be for everybody. So what you see with distributed teams like cloud and DevOps, they do everything for across the incident lifecycle inside of PagerDuty. But because we have a bidirectional integration with ServiceNow and other ITSM tools, you've got that visibility. You've got that centralized visibility for all teams, for your centralized teams. Those central teams, whether it's a NOC or whatever, they get more benefit out of this too. Not only do they get that visibility to things that they previously couldn't see, they can leverage PagerDuty to orchestrate the response for incidents that maybe they're creating manually as well. So huge improvement in efficiency and effectiveness, which reduces your calls. And lastly, we integrate with a variety of systems. So you've got all of your systems of record synced. You've got faster root cause by getting visibility into problems and changes as it relates to your incident lifecycle. So to start summarizing, PagerDuty accelerates your transformation by giving people the empowerment and agility that they're looking for. We're removing those bottlenecks that are huge costs, a lot of reactive labor that's not adding as much value as they could. We give people self-service and we create those tighter customer feedback loops. But we give you the guardrails that you need as a leader to make sure that your business will run the way you want it to. That accountability is enforced. And we do it in a platform that is enterprise grade in terms of scale and security. And then, of course, there's the visibility. You get visibility across multiple operating models. You can quantify the progress and value that you're getting from your transformation, and you can understand the health of your people and proactively manage it. So this is a proven solution. We've got a long list of customers, 14,000 customers, including many in the financial services space. And I'll talk about one. We've got one that's a top 10 bank based on deposits, and they wanted to become the standard for you build it, you ship it, you own it in production. They started with PagerDuty in 2017 with 4,000 users, and since then they've grown to 10,000 users. They've reduced their mean time to acknowledge, meaning their first time to take action, by 89%. They've reduced their overall volume of incidents by 76% over this time. So dramatic improvement in terms of the customer experience that they're providing, while at the same time innovating faster. So with that, I will close and say thank you, but I also wanted to point out a resource for you. PagerDuty's got a history of sharing as many best practices as we can. We share best practices around incident response, best practices around postmortems, retrospectives, and things like that. But we also have all of our best practices around ownership documented at ownership.pagerduty.com. I encourage you to take a look. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Kyle, and great presentation. I have a few questions here for you. So in the complex technology world we live in now, how do you automate end-to-end auto detection capability to pinpoint issues? How do you basically minimize the noise?
So it's an important topic. The noise is overwhelming. So what we've seen with our customers is that the noise has tripled per user in the last 3 years. So that's a problem that is getting worse. One of the things I didn't mention is that PagerDuty has 350 integrations. So they're prepackaged. Most of them get up and running within a matter of minutes. And so we take all of the data coming from those monitoring tools, the change tools, et cetera, and bring it into PagerDuty. And PagerDuty, using a variety of methods, including deduplication, suppression, event routing to make sure that it goes to the right services, et cetera, that helps. But then we have AI built into our platform so that we're learning from how your smart humans are actually responding to this data. So if they're resolving things together, or if they're manually grouping things, or et cetera, we learn from that so that next time those signals come in, we automatically group it into a single incident, but you have all of the context from all of those events and alerts that came through. So it's and as I mentioned, that example with that bank, a 76% reduction in incidents created.
All right. And how do you detect the telemetry?
How do you detect the telemetry? So from our perspective, if I'm understanding the question right, the service owners, they understand what are all the monitoring tools out there. They understand their applications and all of the associated monitoring, et cetera. And literally, they just point the monitoring tools at PagerDuty's endpoints, send the payloads, and we'll absorb that. And you can define rules to route the events where you want them to the services, or you can send them directly to specific services if you know everything's going into a single spot. So it's very easy to set up. This is the kind of thing that takes hours and days, not weeks and months.
And I had a couple questions for you too. Like when you talked about using the tool to orchestrate response, like with a click of a button, you said you can bring in people from different areas of business. How do you do that? Is that just through integration with the UC platform, or how are you actually? What's sort of the underlying communications capability? That's I'm trying to fix something, and with a click of a button, I can bring other people in to help orchestrate that response.
Yeah, if only we had time for a demo, I'd love to show it. The short answer is that we were built as an on-call scheduling and management platform, and we grew from that to where we can orchestrate the response, because we know who is on call for every single team out there, every service out there. And so if I'm working an incident from my phone, I can very easily say, you know what, I need help from the network team. I need help from the database team. And with 2 clicks, I don't need to know who's on call. I don't need to know who's in that team. It will just bring them in and give them the same context, and then we can begin working and collaborating. And I should also point out that we help people work where they are. I mentioned mobile, but they can do those types of things via Slack, via Microsoft Teams, and inside of the ServiceNow UI as well.
Okay. And then you also talked about the business impact and how is something impacting your customers in real time. And I wanted you to elaborate a little bit more on that and talk about, to what extent does it show the business impact? Is it showing just, okay, how many people are affected by this problem? Or does it go to the extent of true business impact? Like, hey, this is, if I as a customer can enter data as what I'm, what is my revenue per hour or something like that? Does it actually show true business metrics like that?
Those are things that you can do, but I would say what we most commonly see is an impact in business language in terms of your digital operations. So, for example, I mentioned bill pay. We won't tell you that, hey, this service name that nobody understands, or this team that's got a superhero name. We won't tell you that there's a problem there. We'll tell you that there's a problem with bill pay. We'll tell you that there's
Hmm.
a problem with logging in, or whatever the transaction is that you're looking for. We can get it down to that level so you can understand from a business perspective how it's impacting your users, what part of your digital infrastructure is impacted. But we also allow your responders to provide stakeholder updates. They don't want to be disrupted when they're working these incidents. So if you can have somebody as part of this process, whether it's an incident commander or a scribe who can take the time to provide executive level status updates, those can go out to the business without disrupting your people. So as a business stakeholder in my shoes, I understand exactly what's going on without having to go out and ask anybody.
Okay.